Before Europe wrote history, Africa made a decision not to conquer, not to beg, but to disappear without dying. What you are about to hear was never meant to survive. Long before modern maps, there existed an African empire built on knowledge, not war. They did not expand with swords. They expanded with understanding. Their kings studied the stars. Their priests measured time. Their farmers understood the land. They knew when rains would fall. They knew when rivers would change. They knew when danger was coming. Time was not something they feared. Time was something they controlled. This empire believed one truth above all. If you control time, you control memory. Foreign traders arrived. They saw cities without walls, roads without guards, and people who did not panic. What they saw confused them. What they felt frightened them. Because nothing here fit the story they believed about the world. This empire had a secret. Knowledge can protect more than weapons. And when questions became dangerous, the elders gathered, not to fight, but to plan survival. They chose silence over slaughter. They chose scattering over extinction. Libraries were burned by their own hands, not in chaos, but in ritual. Cities were emptied slowly. Names were changed. Stories were hidden in songs. And when the outsiders returned, they found ruins. They assumed collapse. They never imagined. This was strategy. This was not the end. This was preparation. History says Africa was discovered. The truth is more uncomfortable. Africa chose. Who would never understand it? When explorers returned generations later, they found broken stone. And overgrown paths. They wrote what they could see. They ignored what they could not explain. Oral history confused them. Symbols frustrated them. Silence angered them. So they replaced silence with assumption. Maps were redrawn. Empires were minimized. Genius was dismissed as coincidence. The greatest lie was not spoken loudly. It was repeated quietly. Africa had no history. Africa had no science. Africa had no empires. And eventually, the world accepted it. But African memory did not vanish. It adapted. Knowledge became proverbs. Architecture became pattern. Astronomy became ritual. Drums carried information. Hair carried maps. Stories carried warnings. Colonizers wrote books. Africans preserved memory. One was louder. The other was stronger. Generations passed. And the lie grew older than the truth. Until something changed. People began to notice patterns. Alignments. Mathematics hidden in art. Ruins that should not exist. Where history said nothing lived. The lie began to crack.
What they could not destroy. They taught the world to forget. But forgetting is not erasure. It is delay. Today, memory is returning. Quietly. Carefully. Through questions. Why do African calendars align with stars? Why do ancient sites match solstices? Why do stories repeat across regions? Because the empire never died. It waited dot comma. It hid in culture. It slept in language. It survived in ritual. And now, remembrance has begun. Not as revenge, not as anger, but as truth. Africa does not need permission to exist in history. It only needs honesty. This story was never lost. It was protected. And if you are hearing this now, it means the silence is ending. Memory is waking. And history is no longer alone. If this history feels hidden, it's because it was.